All right, welcome back to Sermon on the Mount, and I just want to actually cover Matthew 5:21 through 48 one more time, just to cover, not so much go back over what I already covered, but just to point out a few more things, because there's some wonderful things in here, some things that have caused some confusion. I just want to kind of go through that and clarify, and just to recap. Jesus is talking about a superior righteousness that has to do with the righteousness that is of the heart. So it's really about the heart. And so when he says, the law says do not commit murder, we really want to think about the heart, which is really, you don't want there to be anything in your heart that would want to harm somebody, even with your words. And so Jesus goes on and says, listen, just as, obviously if you commit murder, you're going to be held liable by the court, even by a human court. But if you even want to harm somebody with your words, Jesus says, you're held liable to the courts of heaven. And so everybody pays that means something. And anyways, and then he goes on and says, listen, if you're about to bring your offering to the Lord, and then you remember that you've got an issue with your brother or sister, or they have an issue with you, he's like, listen, go deal with that first and then bring your offering. And of course, what he's getting at again is the heart. Listen, the whole point behind bringing an offering to God, is to present ourselves before him. And if we just think that all God cares about is the offering, and he doesn't care about the heart connected to the offering, you're sadly mistaken. And Jesus is like, listen, go get your heart right first. And then when you bring your offering, the heart that's connected to that offering is what pleases God. And so deal with the heart. After he talks about, don't have lust in your heart. And he makes this crazy statement that says, if your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. And of course, he's not being literal there. He's using hyperbole to make a point. What's the point he's making? The point is, do whatever it takes to deal with your heart. You got to remember, who you are as a person is everything. Even in terms of, when you have to pass through the valley of the shadow of death, which we all do have to pass through that, the only thing you get to take with you is who you are. Remember, the promise that Jesus said is that even though you die, you will live. And what he's getting at is, listen, Jesus himself, even when you die, he is going to sustain you as a person. And so that you can be confident you are with him as a person until the day of resurrection. But the only thing you're bringing with you is your heart and who you are as a person. So that is the most precious thing. And the gift of a transformed heart, the gift of being formed into the very character of Jesus, is the greatest gift of all. And so Jesus says that you ought to do everything. So whatever it is that your heart is struggling with, you can trust that God will make a way for you, that God will give you grace, that God will send others into your life to help. God is not just going to abandon you to a wrong heart. He will do whatever it takes to be able to transform it. So you, therefore, in response, in a faithful response, should be willing to do whatever it takes to deal with it. That is the point there. And then, of course, one of the most confusing passages, I don't think the passage is confusing. I think there's been a lot of confusing teaching on it, is his statement about divorce. And of course, he makes a reference to Moses. Moses said, if you're going to send your wife away, send her away with a certificate of divorce. And he says, listen, he basically goes on and said, you shouldn't even want to have divorce. You shouldn't even want to have to go there. And a lot of people have taken some of the teachings on Jesus on divorce and just created a new set of laws about when you can and when you can't divorce, and missed the whole point about really the heart issues. And Jesus made it clear, that ultimately it was God's intent that marriage be a lifelong commitment between a man and a woman. And in the end, the only reason why divorce happens, and the reason why there was a concession for divorce, is because of hardness of heart. And it might be both, or it might just be one. But either way, when there's hardness of heart, then there's no way to reconcile. That's what really causes it. And so, rather than create a law about when you can and when you can't divorce, especially as Christians, we ought to be really examining our hearts in this, and why can't we make this marriage work? What is going on in the heart that is preventing us from being able to move forward? That's really what he's trying to get at there. All right, and then he does go on to talk about oath-taking, and makes a bunch of statements about that. And again, the point there is, listen, integrity matters. It matters so much. And I recently heard this story. I think it was from a African pastor speaking about it. There was a time, not so much anymore, but there was a time in this country where if a Christian came into the court for something, to testify, the court would take that Christian's word, and the matter would be settled. And it was because the Christian community had such a commitment to integrity that even the court system, which was not a Christian court, it was because Christians were in a minority at this time in that country, they would take them at their word. Sadly, that's not the case anymore. And as soon as the first Christian, lied under oath, blew apart that whole reputation. And there is to be something about the Christian community, Jesus says, that there should be such a level of personal integrity that we are known as people of our word. And of course, that makes perfect sense when you consider the Lord, because the whole testimony of Scripture is that you can take God at His word. He always does what He says He will do. He never does what He says He won't do. He is faithful to His word. So if there's anything that Christians should be known for, is a faithfulness to our word. And then, of course, he goes on and talks about, we shouldn't want to take vengeance against people who have harmed us. It's not just a matter of tit for tat. It's just not a matter of even just letting the punishment fit the crime. He's just saying, listen, don't even worry about vengeance. And he uses several different examples, but one of the examples he uses is turn the other cheek. And listen, turn the other cheek has nothing to do with people punching you. It's not like if someone punches you in the face, let them punch you on the other side of your face. That's not what he's getting at. Okay, turn the other cheek. In the ancient cultures, the cheek had to do with honor. And of course, one of the ways you would dishonor somebody or challenge someone's honor is you would give them a backhanded hit to their cheek. It wasn't meant to knock them out or start a fight. It was a way of dishonoring them, or saying you have no honor, or a way of shaming them and saying, "Pow, I shame you, you have no honor, boom, and so his point here, this is very powerful, I think. It's kind of twofold. Number one, turning your cheek is it's an act of love. It's saying, listen, I have no need to defend my honor. Okay, I'm just going to do what's right. I don't need to defend myself, and it's also a real act of courage, because it says this: I don't really care about your opinion of me. I just care about God's opinion of me. And there's, I would love to take a lot more time, and one of these days maybe I will. I would love to unpack that whole thing. If you can really get a hold of this courageous kind of love that has no need to defend yourself to people, you don't even care about people's opinion. And when I say that, I don't mean like you don't value. So there's care in terms of I value, and then there's care in terms of letting people kind of rule or control you by their opinions. Like I don't need somebody else's affirmation. I don't need people to affirm me in order to feel, good about myself. All I need is for God to affirm me, and He does, and He affirms you as well. You don't need other people's opinion. It doesn't matter what they think, and man, I tell you what, there's so much freedom in that, and it's also the freedom to be able to love, because you will love way, way better if you're not controlled by people's opinions of you. All right, that's Matthew chapter 5. Next video, we're going to jump into chapter 6, another amazing chapter in the Sermon on the Mount. God bless you guys.